How did you guys get drinking water? I imagine that they.
Well, okay, the drinking water, they had, in reserve area, they had big tanks where you could get drinking water. And a lot of times, your drinking water was right out of the slop, out of the rice paddies, which was fertilized with human waste. But we had everybody had halazone tablets that we put, like, okay, so you got your helmet full of slop water, okay, and that was your drinking water then. And then what you did then, you took off your sock, or socks, whatever, and poured this slop through the socks so you could strain the crud out of it, and put the halazone tablets in and leave it stand for a half an hour, and then you could drink it. It tasted like shit, like liquid manure. It was similar to that. And that was our drinking water a lot of times. And that's why me and another guy almost died at the outpost once because we ran out of water, and you can only urinate so much, when you start dehydrating, you don't have any water at all. But that was, a lot of times that was our drinking water. Or you could urinate, in your helmet or canteen cup or whatever, and put the halazone tablets in, and you had drinking water. Didn't taste the best, but you could survive. That was the name of the game over there, was survival. Try to survive, no matter what you had to do.
So fresh supplies were really
They were hard to get, yeah. And in winter, well, you couldn't put any water in your canteen because it would freeze and bust your canteen apart. So then a lot of snow. We always were glad when it snowed because then you had something to quench your thirst too. And snow, you could make a snowball and lick on that or whatever.
So what did you all eat? Did you have just
Sea rations mostly. They tried to get us a hot meal every day, but so many cooks got killed trying to get these canisters up where they had hot meal in there. And so they quit that, and then we had mostly sea rations, and they were from World War II. And you had either corned beef hash or frankfurters and beans, or pork and beans, frankfurters and beans, and corned beef hash. And then you put them inside your shirt or jacket or whatever you had on, so they wouldn't be frozen. And then everybody had a GI can opener, and you could open it up and eat that. Most of the time it was cold, but in summer it was hot, really hot. And then if we had a Jeep or a tank available, well, tanks are very few over there for us, but anyway, if we had a Jeep or a deuce and a half, which is a big old truck, we opened up a can and put it on a manifold, so you had hot food then.
So that rest area was luxury.
It was luxury compared to the other part. Yes, it wasn't luxury part, but anyway, usually we got a hot meal when we were in reserve area. They tried to get us a hot meal then.
So how difficult was it to sleep in that
Sleep,
environment?
well, okay. You get out there sometime when it's about, say 20 or 30 below. And then you're so tired that you could sleep standing up actually. But then you'd have we had sleeping bags once in a while, and if you didn't have any, then you put your poncho down and you roll up in your poncho and have your buddy cover you with snow. And that's the way you slept. It was cold trying to sleep when it's cold. And then maybe you slept for maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, and then it was your turn to get up, and so then you covered up your buddy with snow, because snow insulates. It really does. You'd be surprised how you get out of the air, out of the wind and stuff, and you're so tired that you can sleep actually, and then you only had enough opening that you could breathe. But they cover you all up, with snow, and that's how you slept then. a lot of times.
And then you'd have artillery fire.
Yeah, oh yeah,
You
they
hear
were
that.
shelling, yeah, artillery was going on. It was a lot of noise, you know, but you got so used to that afterwards that, you could sleep almost anywhere, and you could hear the shells going over the top, and a lot of times there was small arms fire too, you know, so you had to watch out where you were gonna lay down. So,
On a typical day, how many hours of sleep would you get?
maybe 2 or 3, you know, in 24 hours, something like that. I know one time I think we went for 72 hours without sleep. And then you walk around like a zombie, you know, but, you walk around and it seems, well, I did that yet when I got home from service, but, nothing seems to register. You know, you can hear people talking to you, and 10 minutes later, you don't even remember what they said, you know, because you're so tired, and you gotta keep going. Survive. You gotta survive. That's the name of the game, survive.
Johnny,
Yes,
they were talking about food. Go back to the peanut butter story.
well, I don't know well, okay. I don't know if I'm getting into something here, but anyway, one night, pitch black, we heard that through scuttlebutt, which is a rumor, we heard there was a convoy going through, and the last truck in the convoy was always food, the last truck. Okay, a big deuce and a half, a big truck. Okay, and my commo sergeant says, Heine, we'll get 3 Jeeps, and you're going to get on the hood of the first one, and AG, you're so dang black, nobody will ever see you anyway. He was a colored guy. Well, anyway, my job was to get up on this truck and throw 7 cases off. 7 cases, that's about all the other 2 Jeeps could hold, you know, because each Jeep had 2 guys in it, and there was no room in a Jeep. So my job was to get up behind there. AJ was driving, and he was watching the cat eyes. So then he got up real close, and he wasn't supposed to hit the truck, because then he knew something was going on. So he's driving up, way down and grabbed me low gear, and I shimmied up and cut the straps on 7 cases. Threw the cases off in the ditch, and the other guys were supposed to pick them up. Okay, fine, everything worked out good. Got back off the truck, got back in the Jeep. The other guys had picked up the cans meanwhile, and we had 7 cases, and all the stuff was gallon cans. Okay, it was for maybe officer's mess or maybe for the mess hall, I don't know, we don't know, but anyway, so we get back to the area with these 7 cases, all gallon cans, and get back to the area where we started out with, and got a ponchos over the top of us, a couple of flashlights. Okay, what do we got? Oh man, we maybe have a gallon can of peaches or jam or jelly or something. Here, the first can we opened up was a gallon can, was peanut butter. So we ended up with 42 gallon cans of peanut butter. And what the hell were you going to do with peanut butter? You can only eat so much, you know. So I don't know I think we took them up to the motor pool. I don't know what we did with them anyway. We couldn't bury them because the ground was frozen. So here we are, and them guys just about killed us when we got back because we had 42 gallon cans of peanut butter, and every one we opened was peanut butter. And no bread to put it on, you know, so what are you going to do? So then I had to talk about this at Sheboygan one time, and I don't know if you were along that time, Joanne, or not, but anyway, I was talking about this peanut butter, and this one girl piped up and she says, I just love peanut butter. So then, about a week later, I sent her a big jar of peanut butter. And to this day, I'll eat peanut butter, but I sure don't like it.
So, what was the climate like in Korea?
Like Wisconsin, hotter than heck in the summer and cold, 20, 30 below in winter. It was weather pretty much like Wisconsin, except that they had the monsoons over there. I don't know if you understand what that is, but then when it rains, it rains. I mean, it really rains. I think one time they measured it, I think we got 8 inches of rain in an hour. So everything is flooded. I mean, it's running down them steep hills all over. The creeks rise. I know at one time they built this one bridge, and I was wondering why they built it up about 35 feet up in the air. And within 3-4 hours, the water was almost up to that bridge. So if you were on a road someplace, you got to watch out, because it rose up so fast. The creeks rose up so fast that you couldn't hardly get out of it. And I talked to one guy that a while back. I think he was from Appleton, somewhere's up in there, Appleton or Green Bay. He said that a guy had a big truck, drove into the creek, and got stuck in it, and a helicopter finally rescued him. He was standing on top, and it was only half an hour later he was standing on top of his truck, and the creek rose so fast he couldn't get out of it. And that's how fast these creeks and streams would rise. There's water coming down them hills like you wouldn't believe. And then mud, dirt.
So you weren't just fighting the North Koreans and the Chinese, you're also fighting the elements. Flash floods.
Right. The elements were almost as bad as what the Chinese were a lot of times. The elements were really bad. Trucks would slide off the roads with makeshift roads, and the roads were almost all like big rocks, because there were no real roads like we consider roads around here. You know, they would maybe go, I know to go over Bloody Ridge Pass would take me, it was 11 miles back to the reserve area. We had to go over Bloody Ridge Pass, and it would take me a half an hour to 45 minutes to drive it, because the big rocks, and it was hard on tires too. And it was, people never saw roads like we saw over there. There was no like a highway, or you were really lucky back south if there was a road that was like almost like a gravel road. And there you could go, I think 18 miles an hour was about top speed. So it took you forever to drive anywheres. And you had all 4 wheels turning, and tires would go to heck, and sharp rocks all over. And when it rained, if you were on a trail once in a while or something, you get stuck in the mud. I have a picture where my Jeep is, I got chains on the front wheels on a Jeep, and it's all mud.
So you did a lot of Jeep driving too, right?
Yes, I did, yeah.
Do you find?
I only had 29 holes in my Jeep one time once, but they never hit the gas tank. We had to jump out one time because they were throwing the shells at us going over Bloody Ridge Pass, and they were getting closer and closer and closer. And I told the captain, I said, we got to bail out pretty soon, because the next one's going to get us. And the shrapnel hit the back of the Jeep, so he went out one way into a bunker, and I jumped out the other way, and I was going to jump into a mortar pit where I used to jump in every once in a while, and a mortar round landed just before I got there and killed all 4 of my buddies in there. So.
Wow.
All over the top
But
of the
what-
sandbags, and they were all dead.
What was the reason you did so much Jeep driving?
Because I could find my way around, and I never got lost. God gave me uncanny sense of direction over there.
You knew when
It
to
was all
bail
the
out
man
too.
upstairs.
You knew when to bail out too.
Yeah, well, yeah. When they got that close, then it's time to bail out. Yeah.
Except when he's in Wisconsin.
Well, Wisconsin, that's the United States. I wasn't in the United States then.
A little different.
But no, God gave me a sense of direction, like, it just amazed me once in a while. Like if we'd go out on patrol, I was a radio man, and I'd never had to be a point man because I had the radio. But anyway,
The radio man was the most dangerous.
well, yeah, I know that. But anyway, then whoever led the patrol would always say, Heine, time to get out of here. Take us back. And I never got lost. I got always follow my way back all the time. I never was really lost, never had a map or anything.
Wow.
But then I had a way of getting through the minefields to get us back where we needed to be, so. But it was all the men upstairs that took good care of me.
What was the story about the water buffalo?
Well, a real rich farmer over there had a water buffalo for plowing. Most of them had their wives pulling the plow underneath the water, in the rice paddy for pulling the plow. But this one farmer had a water buffalo, and we walked over this goddamn tank mine, I don't know how many times, it never went off. See, a tank mine needs a lot of weight, to blow up. And this water buffalo must have come out of that rice paddy a little bit and stepped on this tank mine. And anyway, it blew the water buffalo up, And here this farmer is laying in the slop back there, it knocked him on his rear, and the water buffalo took the brunt of everything, The tank mine, I mean, that blows up pretty good stuff. And here wasn't enough to make hamburger out of this water buffalo.
Wow.
So then a bunch of us guys, we kind of chipped together. Well, you don't have American money then, you have all this like monopoly money, So we chipped together, I guess we got maybe $10, $15 together, or something like that. And we gave it to the farmer when he came to. He could buy himself another water buffalo. It blew the shit out of it, there was nothing left of that thing.
That must have been good eating then, huh?
Probably would have been if we would have had some left, It wasn't even enough to make hamburger,
Everybody's got a
The
water.
buffalo's just gone.
It was gone, yeah, right. Well, well, some of that stuff we kind of laugh about, but,
You gotta have something to laugh about,
yeah, sure, because most of the stuff was so sad, that you didn't, but see, you got real numb after a while, like, see, your buddy is, that you don't have time to monkey around, you gotta keep going.
Well, you didn't even know your buddies' names. did you?
No, most of them didn't know. Yeah, everybody had a nickname, because that we didn't, you didn't want to get too close to him, that you knew his lifestyle or whatever, because it was too hard to take, because you lost so many, so you didn't want to get involved in his life really, because it was too hard to take. So, some of them I remember, but you never wanted to know what his real name was most of the time. Everybody had a nickname.
What was yours?
Heine.
Heine?
Because of my German accent, they called me Heine. Even my the captain that I drove for once in a while would call me Heine. Most of the time. I never saluted the son of a gun. I didn't have any respect for officers, except
were they
MacArthur and Captain Miller.
What's the worst they could do, court-martial you?
Well, and then they had to send me home. Yeah.
Hey, you keep writing, you'll have 5 hours worth of stuff.
Did you
Yes.
ever meet MacArthur in person, or?
No, I didn't, no, but MacArthur, we heard a lot about him because he was over there, And he told a bunch of guys once, I didn't hear it himself, but he told a bunch of guys that were in my outfit, he said, if it wouldn't be for you guys in the trenches, I wouldn't be a general. So he was a leader. MacArthur was a leader, boy. He went first, just like Captain Miller. Boy, Captain Miller was good. He was all rifling being that, Captain Miller. If you ever want to look up somebody.
Oh, we were looking.
Yeah, we looked him up, and
Led one of the last bayonet charges up a
Yeah.
hill. Yeah, we were looking
Yeah.
that up.
Handlebar mustache, red,
that was
yeah,
it, man.
yeah.
What part in the war did MacArthur get court-martialed or get
Well,
taken
yeah,
out?
Truman took him out of there
Yeah.
because, see, MacArthur had us way up to the Yalu River, which is, on the other side of the river was Manchuria and China. And he wanted to keep going, see? And Truman wouldn't let him. And then when we did radio back to General Walker, that Chinese were building up on the other side of the river, he says, I saw the message, it said, we aren't going to let a few Chinese laundrymen scare us. But there was like millions of them on the other side. And then they waited till the river froze and then they came across. And General Walker didn't believe it. You know, he was a dopey shit in my book.
I remember reading, like, MacArthur planned the Incheon landing.
Yep,
And
yes,
then,
he did.
Like, really military idea, and then he wanted to keep going, and it's like,
Yeah.
get rid of your best
And
strategy.
see, and all the generals that were under MacArthur didn't want him to do it. See, in the Wolfhound, I was a Wolfhound, and we had a 50-mile square area on the back, way down to what they call the Pusan perimeter. And that's where we held the Chinese army. And while MacArthur went around and cut it in half, he landed in Incheon. But the tide was so bad, you know, the 30-foot tide there, that he only had a couple hours to get in there. But he did it, you know? He did it. And the seawall was something like 30 feet high, the rocks, you know, go up on ladders and stuff. And Seoul, the capital, was only maybe, I think, 30 miles inland or something, but it didn't take MacArthur long, boy, he had that all planned out.
Yeah, it was like
And he was going, boy,
it was like a risk, but
Yeah.
it got results fast.
well, he cut the peninsula in half then that way, you know? And the rest of the Chinese that were down here, they kind of got cut off because MacArthur went straight across and then went north.
Yeah, they had nowhere to go then.
They didn't know, we had them trapped. We just like shooting fish in a barrel then. No, MacArthur was good. He was, in my book, he was one of the best. Boy. And he always said, if it wouldn't be for you guys in the trenches, I wouldn't be a general. So, he respected the guys that did the fighting. He was that way. And he wasn't afraid to get out there in the mud and crap and, you know, go through them. See, when you're in combat, your buddy will give his life for you and you give your life for your buddy, no questions asked. But then if you got a smart ass in there, he can go last long, especially if it's an officer. You know. Normal GI wouldn't even say, well, you gotta do this or you gotta do that, you know. We all you get along. Your buddy is, it's unbelievable how, and you don't even know the guy, you know? I mean, he can give his life for you just like,
Was there ever a time where someone specifically did something that saved you, otherwise you would have been gone, or?
oh yeah, a lot of times. Yeah. We had a guy that was going home, and he was going to get married. He was 17, I think he was. And he was going to go home like the next day. And some or other Chinaman or somebody threw a hand grenade in there. Just like that, he was on top of it. I mean, he got killed. You know. But that's a buddy. You know. He was the closest one to it, and threw his body right on it.
If he wouldn't have done that, there could have been multiple people killed, yeah.
Sure. But the next day he was going to go home. You know, stuff like that is hard to take. You know. But it's a buddy. You see, people don't understand what a combat buddy really is. You know, it's unbelievable. He'll give his life for you
Well, you gotta be
Okay.
watching out for each other because no one else is.
all the time. All the time. You never went any place without having a buddy along. You didn't go to a latrine or you didn't go anywhere unless you had a buddy along. Never went single. And even in reserve area, when you got your picture taken, or guys are taking pictures, you had to have your rifle within 20 feet. Never without your rifle or your helmet within 20 feet. That was a unwritten law. Always had to have your rifle there.
Did those helmets ever do anything for you, or they
What?
just did those helmets ever do anything for you, or are they just to make you feel better, or?
They did a lot. I'll tell you. They did a lot, yep. And that helmet was,
No, what, like, how thick were these helmets?
well, a bullet would go through it if it
Yeah.
hit right, you know, but there's times when they would bounce off. I had a
Oh, so
dent
they
in my
deflect.
hand. I had a, yeah. They would, if it hit a little bit of angle, it would deflect the shell bullet. Didn't stop a lot of shrapnel. Well, sure it did, but if it was a direct hit, I have a picture of one of my buddies where I got a direct hit in the helmet. It's got a hole in the helmet. But your helmet, you use that for cooking, you used it for your bathroom, you used it for everything. you know. You were sitting in the foxhole and you had to take a
Calling to
shit,
the school store, Nick Halverson, Alexis Genke,
use your
Dustin
helmet.
Eswine,
You took the
Tim
liner out.
Halverson,
See, there was a
Jason
liner
Millick,
that fits inside the
Josh
helmet.
Reed,
I don't know if you're
Natasha
familiar with that.
Banky.
But that
The
holds
school
your
store,
helmet
please.
on. And then you have a chin strap. But the strap, very seldom we use the strap because if a shell went off, like say over there, and a concussion would knock your helmet back, you know, and it would break your neck. So very seldom we use the strap underneath.
You want the helmet to be able to take off if it got hit.
Right, yeah, oh, yeah. But you used your helmet for everything, for whatever you needed, you know. You could, you know, if you had any ways of making a little bit of heat to heat your sea rations or something, you dump it in the helmet and build a little fire underneath if it was daylight or so. At night you couldn't. You didn't eat much at night anyway. But whenever your helmet was, you dipped the water out of your foxhole with that and stuff.
It was just another tool, yeah.
Yes, it was. It was a real handy tool.
See, here, I don't know if we've asked about this before, but we have hypodermic needles down
Yeah.
here.
Sure. Well, it was so cold that the medics carried them in their mouths so they wouldn't freeze. See, and I don't know where they carried the morphine, but I don't think the morphine froze, I don't think, but the needles would freeze up. So they would carry them in their mouths. And the medics did when it was so cold so they could use them. But a lot of times when it was real cold, they didn't give you any morphine because everything froze right away. You know? Like I had my finger half shot off and never even felt it. And he was soldered back on out in the field. And he asked me if I needed some morphine. I didn't even feel it. A couple of days later I did, you know, when everything thawed out, you know. But at that time, I had a piece of steel sticking in there, and I pulled that out, and I never even felt that at all. Except I was kind of ticked off. My girlfriend at that time, which was my wife afterwards, sent me a big pair of mittens, you know, to keep my hands warm. And well, you couldn't use them for shooting or anything, but at least you could keep your hands warm. And the son of a guns guy, the mortar round came in or whatever shell, and put a big hole in that nice new mitten I had.
Can't have anything nice over there, no.
No.
So which finger was this at this
This one
happened?
here, and it works, except you sewed it on crooked, but it works. And you got a shot off here, and it works. You know.
Ah,
But I didn't
but-
carry
oh,
it.
with
What?
something like that, you're lucky you still have that part of the finger.
Oh, yeah. But he sewed it up, sewed it back on right out in the field, you know, like going outside someplace, and was below zero, and he sewed it right back up. Sewed it on. And it still works.
When they first introduced the helicopters to bring the wounded back to the
Yeah.
MASH hospitals, how did that, did that make you guys feel?
Oh, that was security. That was a lifesaver. They were lifesavers. That whirlybird, that was a lifesaver, you know, because, you know, you would try and take a wounded down some of those hills. Well, the stretcher bearers would have to just about drag the stretcher on one end on the ground, and the other guys had the stretcher up on their shoulder because the hills were so steep. And these whirlybird pilots, they were unbelievable. I saw them one time when the hill was so steep, we were trying to load some wounded on, you know, you had two wounded, one on each side, you strap on, okay? You put the hood over their face so that dust and dirt don't fly in there. But anyway, the hill was so steep that the blades, he was holding it on there, and the blades were almost hitting the hill. And we loaded up a wounded on one side. He turned that helicopter around and do the opposite so we could load the other wounded on the other side. Because with the helicopter hanging in there, you couldn't reach up high enough to get the wounded on the other side of the helicopter. You understand what I'm trying to say? Okay, so then he's just about hitting the ground with the prop, with the rotor on one side, on a steep part of the hill, and then load a guy on there, and then you had to watch out because you had to get underneath that rotor, you know, with the wounded, without, you know, sticking your head up too far because of the hill, you know. So then they swing it around and jump load somebody on the other side, and then they'd go in between the hills like that. I only saw one helicopter get shot down, only one. And it wasn't much to it, just a frame and a bubble. And that's what we call them, the whirlybirds.
Just enough to get it flying.
Yeah, and, sure, and then afterwards, the Marines had some of these bigger helicopters. That's why I saw my bigger helicopter, and they were for carrying out wounded too. But they were so big, they couldn't land in a lot of places. Where this whirlybird, they could put them down almost any place. They were really good. And like the jets too, I first saw my first jet airplane over in Korea. First time I ever saw a jet airplane, and it was blitzing along. Saw a lot of new stuff over there. I got home and I even saw a TV. We never saw TV before. So, a lot of things.
Suppose a lot changed in that 2-year period you were gone.
Oh, yeah. And cars were so different, yep. Yep.
So you know how much can just happen in a month in the news and stuff like that. What was it like coming back after 2 years, missing 2 years of
Everything was different. Everything was different. People were dressed different, they acted different. I don't know, it was such a different lifestyle when we got back, you know. And they were starting to come out with automatic transmissions and stuff like that, stuff we never even heard of, you know, and different models of cars that you lose 2 years, and it's such a difference. Well, now you don't see it much changes in cars anymore like it used to, but those days, man, from a 48 Ford or whatever kind it was to and you get back and it's 1953, and everything was different. Really, really different. Different laws, different rules.
or specific locations you were in? Like, I know you're talking about Heartbreak Ridge. And all that.
Okay,
If anything,
all right.
you'd tell us about that kind of stuff.
Okay. Okay. I was on one end of Korea to the other, South Korea, I'm talking about mostly. Well, I got into North Korea on patrols too, but, okay, I was at what they call the Pusan perimeters, where we held the Chinese army, okay. And I got hurt in the Kumwa Valley. I got hurt there the first time. Kumwa Valley was kind of central, was west of Heartbreak Ridge. Then I ended up at Heartbreak Ridge. I was at the Punch Bowl, which was a flat area on the East Coast. And I was on Bloody Ridge. And did I mention Pork Chop already? Yeah, I guess I did. Pork Chop Hill.
Well, you can repeat
Okay.
as much as you want.
Okay, the Iron Triangle, which was a couple of hills all in it, like a triangle, like, you know, we called it the Iron Triangle. I fought on White Horse Mountain and Bloody Ridge. Sniper Ridge I was on, White Horse Mountain, I said that already. I never did get into Seoul. I never got right, well, I was in Seoul, but not during the fighting. We were skirted around Seoul. When I was at Incheon, and I think the roughest part was Heartbreak Ridge and then Bloody Ridge. They were bad. Punch Bowl wasn't the best either because the Chinese were on one side. The Punch Bowl was like a 5-mile. That's why they call it Punch Bowl. There was mountains all the way around, and the Punch Bowl was flat, and the Chinese were on one side and we were on the other hills, and it was just fighting back and forth all the time. But every once in a while you had to go out on patrol or drive through the Punch Bowl, and you really got shelled quite a bit. And that's where we called in the Battleship Wisconsin, because that was on toward the East Coast. And fought around Chincheon, Kumwa, a lot of different towns, Punari, Yeongdongpo, places like that. So, and no matter where you went, it was always a scrimmage or something like scrimmage all the time. It was
So
always
just always constant fighting.
it was constant, yeah. Yeah, and then about every 3 weeks they tried to get us to a reserve area where you could write a letter or take a shower or whatever, but a lot of times that didn't last very long because then they'd call you up and then you go in a different sector then. You never, we, only twice that we ever went back to the same place, and that was on Heartbreak Ridge. But otherwise, it was usually a different area. Like say they pulled out one unit from one area to give them reserve, and then maybe the wolfhounds would go into that sector. Okay, and then we'd get relieved by some other bunch again, and then we'd go in a reserve area for a couple of days, and then we'd go into a different area again. So we were always kind of moving, but wherever you went, it was always hell. And the reserve area wasn't real safe either, except that reserve area was usually about a mile or two behind the artillery. So it was, well, we call it a safe area, but there was no place was really safe. You'd still get shelled once in a while, but it wasn't close combat a lot of times, like some of it was.
Would you be able to kind of like recount your experiences at like Heartbreak Ridge or Bloody Ridge, or just kind of what happened at those two locations?
Well, Heartbreak Ridge was a bitch. It was, you go up 3 feet, and you slide back 2. Then you try it again, and meanwhile them Chinese are throwing grenades or they're shelling mortars down on you. And then you look at this guy, and you look at him, and then maybe a minute later you look over there, and he's not there anymore. And then you keep on going, and then you try and get up another couple of feet. It took us a whole month to take Heartbreak Ridge, and we lost 1,051 killed and over 3,000 wounded. And Bloody Ridge was green when we first started out, trees and stuff. And I have a picture of Bloody Ridge. There's nothing but stumps and stuff like that left. It was just an uphill battle. And then the reason they named, like Heartbreak Ridge, the reason they named it because some big mucker somewhere along the line said we were across the 38th parallel. Well, part of it was. Sniper Ridge was across, part of it across the 38th. Pork Chop Hill was, part of it was across the 38th. And Bloody Ridge, part of it was across the 38th. So we had to give Heartbreak Ridge back to the Chinese. And we walked off of there without firing a shot. It took us a whole month to get it. Then about 2 months later, then we had to take it again. I don't know, maybe we lost that time. But then when you go up the second time, then you remember where that guy got it, or that guy got it, or somebody else got it. Because you remember the same positions a lot of times. It was hard going up.
What had changed that they suddenly decided they had to have it back again?
It was the high ground. Heartbreak Ridge was the highest ground around there. We had to take the high ground. And that's why they wanted it real bad. And Pork Chop Hill, when I left, they gave that back again to the Chinese because they said it wasn't worth fighting for anymore because too many people got lost taking Pork Chop. And they let the Chinese have it afterwards. From what I heard, I don't know, I wasn't there anymore then. So. Because when I got home, the day I think it was either the day before I got married or the day after I got married, that's when the armistice went into effect. We were waiting for that a long time, but, because they always dickered around and couldn't communicate with them guys.
So throughout this whole Forgotten War, about how long were you in active service over in Korea?
I was in combat 14 months, but I was over there longer. I was in Japan, and I was figuring the times I was in reserve area and stuff. I was gone 2 years, but in combat, I would say actual combat, I was 14 months.
I suppose that's a long time to be away in that kind of an environment. And then
Yeah, because you
come
never
home
knew from 1 minute to the next if you were going to be alive or not.
And then you come home and
And then then you're the bad people when you come home. And then you're so jumpy that everything scares you then. Like, even to this day, I won't go to see fireworks if I don't have to. Because it brings back too many memories. But then again, You know, I'm patriotic enough. If my Uncle Sam would need an old guy like me, I'd go tomorrow. I would go again, because this country is worth fighting for, I tell you. We live in a free country. And you find that out when you get out of the United States once, that other countries are different, altogether different.
Where were you when you received the orders that you were heading home?
Where was I?
Yeah.
I don't even know what area I was. I couldn't tell you. I knew I got out of the Punch Bowl, and then we went west, and then we were in reserve area, and then I got the news that I was going to go home, which I should have been home. I should have been in civilian in March, and this was June, and I still fired my rifle in June. But anyway, then I got the news 2 days before I was leaving for home, and me and this other survivor, we sat in a cave, and with a flashlight we played checkers for 2 days until we were ready to go. And I wasn't going to go out on patrol anymore. They could have court-martialed me. I wouldn't have went out, because if they court-martial you, they had to send you to the States to do that, see? And we knew we were going home. So we sat, and guys would bring us chow and stuff, and, well, we had plenty, sea rations. So for 2 days, me and this other guy sat in the cave and played checkers. It wasn't a good checkerboard, it was a homemade board, you know, and we had little wooden blocks or something that we used for the checkers. But anyway, somebody's girl had sent him some lipstick or something. I forget what. But anyway, that's where the red ones we had lipstick on, and the other ones were just, they weren't black, but little pieces of wood we used for checkers. I sat in there for 2 days. The only time we went out was to take a leak or go to the latrine, if there was one around. And the rest of the time we just sat in there in the cave. And then and he took us with a truck to Incheon, and I loaded on a ship. Well, the ship couldn't come in close, so we went on a landing barge, or not a barge, but a landing craft. And he took us out to the ship, and from then we went home.
So it was smoother leaving than arriving. You didn't.
What?
It was smoother leaving than arriving.
Oh yeah, I didn't have to go in the water.
Yeah, you didn't have. It wasn't like a cramped flight, one-way flight over there. You just like you said, getting there, you just took a plane over.
Yeah,
And
over
then-
to Japan.
And leaving,
Yeah.
and then leaving, did you take a plane back too, or did you?
No, I went on the Marine Lynx, which was a ship that later broke up afterwards. But anyway, I was lucky. The ship didn't break in half when I was on it, but I guess a month or so later, I guess it broke in half because we hit a typhoon when we were out of Seattle. We were on a ship about 2.5 weeks. And then we hit a typhoon just before we got to Seattle Harbor. And the water was so rough that what we call the screws, the props, would come out of the water. And then, and then go down under 2 waves and then come back up again. And that's where I got my teeth knocked out when we hit this typhoon, because we were sleeping 5 high, and I was lucky. I was up by the steam pipes, but that's a long ways up there, when you got 5 bunks, and the bottom ones, if a guy turned over on top of you or something, you could feel him. You just couldn't wiggle around there, and it was, I don't know how many guys we had on there, but anyway, we weren't allowed up on decks most of the time because the ocean was so rough. So most of the time we were down below, and you never knew where you were, And if you did get up on deck, excuse me. It was water washing down the decks and stuff, and it just about swept you overboard. So they had the hatch, what they call a hatch, the doorway. Those are all locked up from the inside, so the water wouldn't come in. And then guys would be throwing up, and they'd flush it down to what they call the bilge, and then it was pumped back out in the ocean again. But the puke was running from guys being sick from this rough sea. the puke was about 4 inches deep coming down the stairways, and so they just take water hoses from the ocean, and flush it all down. We had to stand in line when we ate. They fed us good on the ship, but you stood in line like maybe 3 times longer than this table, but everybody stood. And when the ship went one way, then your chow, your plate would, or metal plate, whatever we had, would slide down one way, and when the ship went the other way, it would slide back again. A lot of times when your tray came back to you, somebody had puked in it already, So you just dump it out and get another one, But they fed us good on the ship. The Navy had good food. Yeah. But it was, yes.
That was better than your sea rations.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
How
Oh,
old
wow.
were
And we
they?
got 3 meals a day.
Johnny,
What?
how old were your sea rations?
From 1946 and 1948.
From,
This was back in 51 and 52, or 52.
Hard to call it food after that amount of time, huh?
Well, it was getting old, yeah,
it
right.
was from World War II?
It was all our equipment was World War II. Everything we had was World War II. So, our equipment was all World War II stuff. My rifle was old, but it worked good. Well, I had a good rifle. But otherwise, everything was old. But the sea rations, you survived on it. And I never minded this corned beef hash. I used to trade mine for pork and beans a lot of times, my corned beef hash. Or they would give me the corned beef hash, and I'd give them my pork and beans, or beans and frankfurters, whatever.
It's an acquired taste, huh?
Yeah, sure, right.
When you got back to the United States, did you find it easy to put trust into people? Yeah.
No, you didn't trust anybody, nobody. Nope. It seemed like everybody was out to screw you. Even at work, you didn't trust anybody. You were always looking around behind you. You didn't even trust your own family, because it was so different. And then you went back as though nothing had ever happened. You were supposed to start your job as though you were shooting a rifle one day, and the next day you're supposed to be a civilian and act normal. It was hard, really hard, because you were afraid to drive. You were afraid everybody was going to come up behind you or something, and the first thing you wanted to do is somebody said something, you wanted to knock them down or whatever, if they said something. And I remember this one lady. They had it was unwritten clause, I guess, but if you were drafted or you went into service, when you got back, they had to give you your job back, regardless of what. It was that way. It's the way it was. So when I got back, they had to give me my job back that I had at Hart Carter Lawson Division, which was Tecumseh afterwards. And this one lady was running at one of the machines that I used to run once in a while, and she told me a couple of times, "I wish you never would have came back, because you're taking the food out of my kids' mouths, because I'm losing my job because of you." They gave her a different job, but the job that she had, she liked. So, and you got to hear that all the time, and people would swear at you and bitch at you, and it wasn't easy coming back. And I think the guys in Nam, had it worse than what we did, because they were the bad guys too.
So did you just learn to ignore everything, or did
Well, after a while, you just learn to clam up. So for 40 years, we didn't talk about it. And because you didn't want to, because nobody would understand, and you were the bad guy anyway. So after a while, like say after about a month or so, you just clammed up. And then for years, we never talked about it.
Do you think people are more willing to listen and try to understand today than opposed to 40 years ago?
Oh, yes, definitely, yeah. They're even having welcomes for the guys coming home, But they didn't have that in our day. And it was just, it's so different now, which I think is really good. People are starting to understand what these guys are going through, like guys in Afghanistan and Iraq and all over else, Desert Storm, wherever they went, or are. people are starting to understand that that's not an easy life. And one good thing that I really like now is some guys can call home. You know, maybe not all the time, but once in a while they can call home. Well, we never had any communication except for writing letters when we were gone. And it would take 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks for a letter to get back and forth. So, and then most of the time we didn't know just exactly where we were. And at that time the mail was, if you wrote something, some of it was censored. And you had to watch what you wrote because you couldn't say, well, here I am. A couple of times I wrote I was by Heartbreak Ridge. You know, but most of the time you didn't, a lot of times you didn't know anyway, but you couldn't say, well, okay. Today I went out, last night I went out on patrol and only 2 or 3 of us came back. You couldn't write stuff like that, you know, because then your family would worry too. You know, so, and half the time they didn't know what was going on.
So, when you finally got back to the States, how long of it was the transition going from a ranger back into a civilian?
It was a bitch because you were used to all this combat, and then when we got home, you had to act like a civilian, you know. And it was hard to take because when we got home, people didn't want us really. You know, we never had a welcome when we got home, except for when we got in Seattle Harbor. They had a fireboat out there that was squirting water in recognition of our service. But like you got home on a Saturday, and Monday, like on the Monday, you started working as though nothing ever happened, you know. And it was hard, and then to act like a civilian as though nothing ever happened, and you had all this on your mind, your head was just swarming. And then guys would come up and tell you, hey, I haven't seen you for a while. Where were you? Well, I was fighting in Korea. Oh, come on, don't give me that shit, you know, because the war was over in 45 and 46, and it was just a police action over there. All you guys did was go after them Korean women, stuff like that. You know, I mean, you got to hear that, and then after a while, you just clammed up. You didn't even talk about it. So for 40 years, we never talked about the war. My kids don't even know what I went through. And then I had to go see a shrink when I had cancer because I never slept at night. And that was the first time my wife heard a lot of stuff that I went through because I had to tell this doctor, you know, what all happened. But my wife didn't know a lot of that stuff because we never talked about it afterwards. Until about 10, 15 years ago, then I had to see this psychiatrist, and then he had me talking about it, and then he had me going to different schools and talking. Other than that, we never mentioned it, except one of my brother-in-laws that was over there got shot up pretty good, and once in a while we would just say a few words about, you know, what we did or what we didn't do. And then my other brother-in-laws would say, well, is that all you guys ever talk about, is that dang Korean War? So then we just quit that too. So there was nothing that we ever really related to anybody until the last few years. It's coming out more and more now. But before that, it was just a forgotten war. It wasn't even called a war, it was called a police action. So that's what it was called. See?
Now, I imagine one of the hardest transitions was sleeping, falling asleep because you didn't have the background noise. It was quiet.
Well, yeah, but see, if with combat guys, they don't sleep much because you get all them nightmares. See? Your nightmares is what kills you. And you never want to go to this day, I don't want to go to sleep. I'll go to sleep, but I never want to because you never know when they're coming up. Like it could happen, like right here, all of a sudden I get a flashback. And you never know when it comes, even in the daytime. You know, I never, in fact, I don't even have a TV because I never want to watch TV because I might doze off in a chair and all of a sudden, choom, it's right there.
Then do you take a lot of actions basically to avoid dozing off and sleeping then?
Yeah, I worked 3 jobs. I slept, then I worked at Kohler, I worked on a 3rd shift, and I would sleep an hour and a half in the morning, and then I'd sleep an hour and a half before I went to work at night. That's the only sleep I ever slept almost all my life. And then I never wanted to sit down, and I could never sit down and relax, you know. And if I sit someplace or I go someplace, I always kind of try and keep my back to the wall. Even when Joanne and I go out to eat or something, I won't sit in a restaurant if I have to sit out in the middle someplace, because I'm always afraid somebody's going to come up behind me, and that's bad news.
Now, with the nightmares, do you feel like the talking to the schools and talking to us and sharing your experiences, do you feel it has helped a little bit?
That's
at
what the
least?
doctor says, and Joanne says it helped. But I know from, like tonight, or when I talk at school, I won't sleep that night. You know, like today, I have a hard time tonight, but that's my problem, nobody else's, you know, because I got to relive some of that. And they're so real. That's the bad part of it. It's just like it happened yesterday. I mean, it's so real that, just for instance, you know, me and another guy, we almost died from thirst one time. We were pinned down, and I usually go to chapel on Wednesday nights. On Thursday morning, like last night, from 1 until 2, I pray at the chapel in Chilton, Adoration Chapel. But that one night, I stayed at her place, and well, instead of driving home and going right to work, I stayed there. I don't know if it was either before I went to the chapel or after, I don't know. But I had one of these nightmares where we were dying on an outpost, and we needed water. We didn't have any water. We couldn't urinate anymore, and we were pinned down. And she said I drank 4 glasses of water in about 20 minutes time. I was so dry, and I got up off the couch, I had a glass of water, laid back down, went to go to sleep, and I was so dry. It was so real. She said I drank 4 full glasses of water in about 20 minutes. That's how real they are. And it wasn't because, I figured I was dry. I was dying of thirst. And that's how real those nightmares are.
When did you first go visit the war memorials in Washington, D.C.?
Last year, I don't remember what month it was, but it was my grandson's wedding, and we went to Kentucky, and from Kentucky then we went to Washington, D.C. And then I also went to 82nd Airborne, Screaming Eagles, and I was treated like a king there. They let us in, and it was really awesome. I made 50-some miles inside the base. They let me go all over the place except the ammunition dump. And when I got in there, I was in the wrong driveway first, and then there was a big old bull sergeant there. And I asked him, I says, how the heck do I get out of here again? And he bellered, and he said, stop that traffic. I mean, he really hollered. They could hear him about a quarter mile away. And all the traffic was stopped, as security up the Gigi. And he says, okay, Sonny, now you can make a U-turn here and drive right back out. And there was nobody in my way. Then I got to the next gate at the Airborne, where the main entrance was, and you had to open, they had such security there, it's unbelievable. But so I opened my trunk, and some guard came out and looked, and she says, you can go right through. And I drove right past the whole lineup on the left-hand side. I had free sailing all the way. I got in there and I met a guy walking in a parking lot, and I says, how do I get past security in these buildings here? And he says, well, that's no problem, I'll get you in there. And here I found out people were saluting him, and they wear their insignia on a different place now. And people were saluting him, and he says, "These people are with me." We walked right through security, and I was home free there. I was a Lieutenant Colonel Neitzel from Racine. He was from Wisconsin. So I really had it made there, and we were there almost the whole day at this airborne outfit. And it was really good. So that was the first time I was in D.C. And then what?
He gave you his patch.
Yeah, he gave me his airborne patch, took it off of his jacket, gave it to me. He said this patch was in Afghanistan twice. And I wish I would have had it along, but I don't have it along. And he really treated me good. And then the second time I went, I had a letter from the president of South Korea, and we were invited there for the 60th anniversary of the start of the Korean War. And it was really good. Met a lot of wheels, a lot of wheels, boy, I tell you. There was one guy that was kind of the head of it. He came down in the crowd, and he brought two attaches that were from South Korea. He brought them right to where there was 400 of us sitting on the lawn chairs and stuff. And he brought them people over by me, and he introduced them to me. And it was really great. He kind of, I don't know why, but he kind of took me under his wing all the while we were there. Whenever I saw him, he was always looking out for me. It was really good, really good.
So there was a lot of respect from everybody you saw there. Like,
Oh, yes, oh, yeah. I had my picture taken, I don't know how many times, and well, so did the other Korean veterans too, but I don't know, I had my picture taken so often there, and the South Korean people were really respectful. And the first time I was there, they were really good. They were actually better than what all the wheels were afterwards, the second time I went. But the first time, those South Korean people were thankful. They just about bowed down in front of you, and man, they just kept right on thanking you all the time.
So what are these wheels you're talking about?
Wheels like, you know what dogs do to wheels, but anyway, these were wheels that were really high up in the government. You know, a lot of senators and congressmen and big shots from South Korea and stuff like that. And they were all, those South Korean people were all dressed up in their uniforms and stuff. They really, a lot of respect for you. But these congressmen or whatever they were, or government people, you know, they had a big doings for us at night, and it was free food and free wine and whatever you just about wanted. You know, they were pretty high up in the government, is what when I was talking about wheels. You know, so they're pretty high up there. All wear suits and stuff, and I felt like a peon. I just had this shirt on, and I probably looked kind of scroungy, I don't know, but I had my cap on, and that was about it.
now, how did seeing the memorials affect you? Like, what did you think of them?
It was it was good. It was good, and it brought back a lot of bad memories, because when I looked at the statues of the Korean memorial, the last guy in that column, not a column, but in that patrol, was a radio operator, and I could identify with him because he was the last man and he was looking around backwards, and I was the last guy all the time. I never had to be point man, because God gave me a sense of direction that you wouldn't believe. And whenever the patrol was over with, then the patrol leader would send a word back to me and take us back home, because I never got lost. And God gave me that sense of direction. And I thank God for that. It was really, really something. But it was real, and it wasn't real because I knew they weren't being shelled and fired on, but it was like a patrol that we were on, went through the rice paddies and stuff. it was like being there, but except these statues were bigger, you know, but I could identify with each one of the guys. That was, one guy had a Browning automatic rifle, and one guy had another radio, and one had a walkie-talkie. A couple of guys had carbines, and we all had ponchos on, and that was mostly the name of the game. Ponchos most of the time because of the rainy season and stuff. So,
Do you feel the memorial honored those who lost their lives in Korea in a respectful way?
oh, I think so. I guess I definitely think so. Yeah, and see, I'm just a survivor. I'm not a hero, but I can. The guys that are heroes in my book are the ones that died. And then they had a wall there. It was all pictures of guys that it was like a granite wall. It was, I don't know, maybe, must be over 100 feet long, I guess. And it was all pictures of guys that were over in Korea. You know, like the nurses, the Navy, the Marines, the Army. And it was all pictures, all engraved in this granite wall. And Joanne took a picture of me, and it was like a reflection on that wall, and it looks like I'm standing in there with these guys. That was the reflection. You know. I don't have the picture here, but Joanne's got it someplace. And it was really good. The wall really, really impressed me. I think we were there. Must have been. This was the first time I was there. I must have been there. I think about 3/4 of a day that I spent right by the memorial. It was really, really impressive, really. But this wall and these guys, it was sad in one way. I had tears, but it was good too, you know, because they finally recognized us, that we were fighting that forgotten war. Because it was called the forgotten. It wasn't really declared war, it was just a police action.
And how did you see how other veterans reacted to the memorial around you? Like, was it similar to yours?
There were a lot of tears. A lot. Most of them were crying. Most of them. I bet you 90% of them had tears. Because they're remembering their buddies too, you know, because the guys that were there were like me, survivors. About 400 of us. And you could tell that he went through a lot because they look in their eyes. You could tell that. You know, they had a veteran, a combat veteran's got a certain look in his eye, I think, when you're talking to him about something like that.
So how did it feel to be in a place like that where there were people around you that you could identify?
That was wonderful.
Experience.
That was good. That was really good because you knew what they were talking about and they knew what you were talking about. And it wasn't like talking to somebody else that doesn't understand what the situation was, or this guy would say, well, it was 30 below or 20 below and we slept outside, and it was all talk like that with together veterans, you know. And yeah, or we talked about Heartbreak Ridge and Bloody Ridge and Pork Chop Hill and Pusan Perimeter, and everybody knew what you were talking about. You know, it wasn't something like when you're talking to somebody and you can tell them, you can talk to them for a couple of hours and they still don't understand. But these guys that you talk to knew just what the hell you were talking about, yeah. And I knew what they were talking about. So it was good that way. Yeah.
I suppose you can never truly understand what it was like unless you're over there
Right,
with
unless
everyone
you're,
else.
yeah, right. That's when you really understand.
Even here, we could listen to you talk for hours and hours. We'd never truly understand what you went through.
Yeah, I know.
We
I
could
know,
do our
but
best, but
I know you guys are doing a good job. You guys are doing a wonderful job. Really good.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that, you know. So,
Connie,
yes.
tell them about the guy you met at the picnic in Johnsonville.
Oh, I went to a dance at Johnsonville, was it 2 years ago, a year ago? 2 years ago. He, excuse me. I had my Korean shirt on because they had doings there for, it was like, wasn't just honoring the veterans, but the veterans, I think, could get free into the dance, you know, so, which they have every once in a while. But anyway, there was a guy there, he had a cap on, and army cap, something like mine, and then he saw I had a shirt on, and he says, did you ever hear the Pusan Perimeter? And I said, sure, I know that. I said, the Wolfhounds and the 5th Regimental Combat Team held off the whole Chinese army at the Pusan Perimeter, which is the southernmost part of Korea. We only had about a 50 square mile area, and we held so MacArthur could go around and land at Incheon. And he said he was in the 5th Regimental Combat Team, so I knew right away where he was and what he went through. And he was crying. It wasn't, most of his buddies were gone that got killed, and because the 5th just about got wiped out. Well, so did we, but we held, and so did the 5th, and he was crying all that while. That guy was really crying, and because he was thinking of his buddies, you know, that didn't make it.